Good morning, everyone. Happy Easter. It's so good to see you all here with us this morning. And welcome on this beautiful sunny day here in Rochester. Welcome from wherever you are joining us from this morning. As we start our worship service, I will just invite us all to take a deep breath together and to settle in for our beautiful prelude this morning from our fabulous music director, Brock Tesvolds, plus a guest, a bonus. Enjoy. Wow. Well, if you were not awake before you came in, I'm sure you are awake now. Welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and to serve the community. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. And if you are feeling the resurrection of spring, or if you just barely made it here this morning, we welcome you. We welcome all of you. It is good to be together this morning. Dear ones, if you are here for the first time or for the second time or third time, welcome especially to you. Thank you so much for finding our online sacred space and worshiping community. It's so good to be here with you and with everyone who's here. If you are here for the first time, we have a visitors form that is typed into the chat by Cheryl Dunbar, our usher this morning. So please click on it and fill it out at your convenience so we can offer you a broader welcome than just here in this virtual sacred space. As we gather this morning, we want to invite you to please type a hello, a greeting, a good morning, a happy Easter into the chat, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. Please just let us know that you're here, as folks have already been doing. It is so good to hear from folks this morning and to offer greetings to one another. Welcome, welcome, welcome to worship here at First Universalist Church. As we are waking up this morning, our opening hymn is hymn number 1000, Morning Has Come. So let us join hearts and voices in singing together this morning, recognizing that even as we are singing muted in our own homes, we are creating a collective song across our city of Rochester, our community, our country, and the world. So let us sing together hymn number 1000, Morning Has Come.
Ostara, the divinity of the radiant dawn, of upspringing light, a spectacle that brings joy and blessing. Here with the spring equinox, we celebrate the joy of new beginnings, the sweetness of buds and tiny blooms, of the glory of the sunlight growing longer and stronger, of the chirps and calls of robins and cardinals calling us out from the dark shadows of isolation. But with it comes the unknown of what lies before us. From the dark of the newly thawed earth comes the promise of new growth and new beginnings. It is a season of hope. Hope is what we have and what we give each other. And no matter how we gather together, virtually or physically, we can feel the warmth and love of our blessed community. So come, let us worship together. As Reverend Lane lights our chalice in our sanctuary, and some of us light our chalices at home, let these flames light up what lies ahead for our city, our country, and our world as we carry our messages of love and justice far outside these virtual walls. Please join in reciting our chalice lighting words that are written on our screen or in your order of service. May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me now in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. Today you will hear Jody and Chris Reynolds' heartfelt, beautiful testimonial as to why they pledged their support to our church. They will tell you how our amazing church stands strong despite the loss of all of us inside, and what it always gives to us with so much warmth and love. It continues to be a beacon of light and hope. Our virtual sanctuary embraces our spiritual connection and love. Throughout the pandemic, the church has been watched over and cared for, and we can always use the financial help to continue our mission to nurture the spirit and serve the community. Please click the link in the chat to give online to First Universalist Church, or feel free to send a check to the church. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
So how many of you here like to sleep? How many here like to sleep this morning? Anybody? Show of hands? Well, too bad, because it's Easter and you have to be at church. But, however, I am going to tell you a story of somebody else who likes to sleep. And as the seasons change and as it gets lighter out, it's time to wake the sleeping God. Has anybody ever heard of the sleeping God? This is a story of Ostara, of the spring equinox. Anyone? Maybe some. I'm going to tell you a bit about him. See, in my culture, in my Scottish heritage, as well as Irish and English, and for some of us Welsh or Isle of Man, there are two halves of the year, as the old stories go. One half of the year is lighter and the other half darker. We praise both as sources of strength and as a way to cooperate with the seasons and the cycles of the earth. In the darker half of the year, a baby was born on the winter solstice, in the days when the light grew shorter. But this baby had to be hidden away for his own safety, raised in a place where he could not be known and where his power might not be diminished. There, safely in hiding, this baby grew into his power in secret, allowed to grow up good and strong. As he has continued to grow, he has needed to rest more and more. Anyone who has raised a child through adolescence or teenagerdom can tell you growing takes a lot of energy. He has been known by many names: the Summer Lord, Mapanos, Sunchild, King Arthur, Fionn, and even some might liken him to Jesus of Nazareth as well. As our story continues, if it reminds you of anyone else, feel free to type the name into the chat. And I have no idea why this child was male, but I imagine it has to do some with the ideas of the time around gender when this mythology was born. Either way, as he has been growing and coming of age in the times of darkness, sleeping, each spring we in this Celtic lineage gather to wake the sleeping God, to awaken him to his power, to wake him up out of the depths of his growth experience, and to welcome the light's return. I wonder what helps you to wake up in the mornings. Some of us may use an alarm. For some of us, maybe a dog's barking wakes us up in the morning. Some may be woken up by the sun or just wake up on our own some days, but this sleeping God has been asleep since December, and so folks make a huge deal about waking him up. Some bang on pots and pans around their house. I was raised with Morris men, who are Celtic folk dancers, welcoming in the first sunrise of the spring equinox atop Lantern Hill near my house where I grew up, with bells attached to their pants that jingle as they dance. Some sing songs, others go outside and give a big yell, because it takes a lot to wake up someone who has been asleep for just a little over 3 months. So today, I'll invite you to find a way to wake the sleeping God in your own way, with a bit of your own noise, or even, if it feels more appropriate, a lit candle to celebrate the light's returning. But first, we must make our journey below the ground to awaken him. So I just want to invite you to take a moment to imagine with me. Close your eyes or soften your gaze if it helps you to just go through a bit of guided imagery with me for a second. You are headed down into the ground, perhaps through a cellar door or just a pathway found behind a rock. It is dark, but you see a dim light off in the distance. You smell that moist, fresh, underground dirt smell all around you. As you walk ahead, you come to an open room, again with very faint light. You could see as your eyes have adjusted, but you can't quite see everything because someone has not turned on the lights. The light is faint. You can make out a shadowed lump ahead, and as you walk closer, you find a sleeping man laying on a table, surrounded by some of his dearest possessions: a sword, a spear, a dagger, a bow. It is quiet here, and you listen. And he is breathing deeply, as if in a deep sleep. And yet, when you look at him, you know he needs to wake up. You know he needs to wake up so we do not have to continually live in darkness and cold. We know that if he does not come, the world will not be energized by the spring and the return of the sun. It is clear he has experienced some pain in his past and has needed to hide away. But when he awakens, we are better able to hold the pain of our own pasts with the present day. And so we choose to wake him in whatever way works for us, and his eyes open with appreciation and gratitude that you came to wake him. All of a sudden, the space grows a bit lighter, and after a few minutes, it's as if the lights have been fully turned on, and we are called to celebrate this. Woohoo! And why would we celebrate the return of the light? Well, most of us live in Rochester, so we are familiar with the new life the light brings after the dull gray of winter, of course, but it's about more than that. We welcome the light because it brings hope. We welcome the light because it affirms the seasons of the year. Spring is all about new growth, the fertility of the land, babies being born, new growth out of death, decay, and rest that winter has brought into our world. The sleeping God will fully grow into purpose and being in the summertime. It can take each one of us here a little while to wake up. But for now, we celebrate that out of the depths and the safety of darkness, new light is reborn.
Last March, life as we knew it imploded. Our normal routine of schlepping the kids to this and that, visiting with family, socializing with friends completely stopped. But work didn't.
I'm the medical director for the hospitalist group at Rochester General. There's a pandemic coming? Game on. We take care of sick people. That's what we do. There was a hint of professional pride in having the opportunity to apply our expertise to the care of our community. I'm also the chair of our ethics committee. In March, it looked like we were going to run out of ventilators in Rochester. My remarkable colleagues took on tremendous clinical responsibilities this past year. In addition to the clinical work, I was responsible for leading a team to develop an ethical ventilator allocation strategy. The idea of denying the standard of care to many in our community was a terrifying prospect. I had dozens of meetings that continued well after the kids went to bed last spring. We never had to allocate ventilators, thankfully, but the sheer quantity of suffering and death that we bore witness to in those hospitals that nobody could visit, it was exhausting.
In the meantime, my law firm went remote along with Henry and Caitlin's elementary school. My days were a scramble of helping the kids with their schoolwork, getting them connected to their occasional virtual meetings, tending to the, "Mom, I'm hungry, what can I eat?" interruptions, and squeezing in my work as a patent attorney in between. We worried about the health of our loved ones and whether Chris would bring COVID home to the family. We were saddened by the losses in our community. We were stressed even by the simple things like buying the groceries. And we didn't even have many of the challenges and direct losses faced by so many. This past year has been horrible for people across not only our country, but the world. Despite having white privilege, gender identity privilege, socioeconomic privilege, and physical security, we still felt haggarded by COVID.
The opportunity to be with you as a church community, even virtually, was our shelter in this storm. Seeing the loving faces of our congregation brought us a sense of community that we so dearly missed. Reverend Lane's words offered us a chance to recenter ourselves. Reverend Michelle's amazing messages for all ages help all of us, but especially our kids, connect to the sermons. And the music, so aesthetically beautiful and creatively delivered, was soothing to our souls. There were other ways the church reached out to us too, from the pandemic craft kits for the kids, the Christmas pageant materials and cookies, and the thank you card Caitlin received for using her body to flip over her bed. We've been touched in so many ways. We believe in the mission of this church, the power of the congregation to improve our community, and the open-heartedness to celebrate the life of people of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs.
For us, if there was ever a time we needed this church, it was this year. You reminded us that we are all in this together, to hold on to faith, hope, and love, and to breathe. But we know the First Universalist Church is a place that has helped not just us this year, but many individuals and families over many decades.
We support the church to ensure that its mission will continue forward through the ages, to work against the systemic inequities so that our intergenerational church can carry its great work forward from the past and the present and into the future. On this Easter Sunday, we give to support the rebirth of a more just, equitable, inclusive, and humane future for our community and our world after this pandemic. If you can, we hope you will do the same.
Dear ones, I want to invite you now into this reverent time of sharing in the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to listen from a heart-centered place and space. As I place stones into this bowl of water, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our gathered community. All are invited to share in the chat some of the joys and sorrows that you bring into this space this morning. And we want to make sure that we can hear from everyone who is gathered here. So let us enter into this time, this important ritual, this place of connecting in joys and sorrows. I have a joy this morning to share from Kitty Forbush, whose grandniece or grandnephew, the parents are not revealing the gender or the name just yet, was born this past week, and Kitty is a great auntie. Congratulations, Kitty. Fabulous. We share a joy from Steve Searles, who received his first vaccine shot this past Tuesday. A request from Lisa Gwinner, please send hope to my stepmother, Sis, as she reluctantly prepares for a mastectomy in the next few weeks. Thinking of you, Lisa and Charlie, and all who know Sis. A joy from MJ Curry, so happy to have hosted fully vaccinated friends for dinner last night and to get a hug. Therein lies the hope. A sorrow from Jean Ott for family members and others who are refusing to get vaccinated. We are holding all the frustrations and the joys together in this community. From Bill and Heather Jones, our son Simon and his wife Danielle are having their first child, a little girl to be born in September. Wow, congratulations. Wonderful. Beth Ayers shares that she is uplifted by several opportunities she's had recently to actively work against racism. We share a joy from Eileen for 3 of her sisters. One sold her condo, another's purchase offer was accepted, and the third found out she got a part after her theater audition. All on the same day. Made me very happy. Joining in your joy, Eileen. A joy from Emma, who's getting her second shot this afternoon and hoping it does not kick her butt. Yes. Joining you in that hope. A sorrow from Rachel and Ian. My roommate had to put her cat to sleep last night. Oh, he was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, and we are very sad, but glad he is no longer in pain. The loss of a pet is so difficult. For Michelle Thornton, a joy to be celebrating a small Easter lunch with friends and my brother who just moved to Rochester today. Welcome to Rochester for your brother, Michelle. From Michael and Kelly Scott, excited to have bought tickets to visit our daughter Shannon in Florida in May. Awesome. From Tom Williams, please pray for a safe return of David Henderson, a high school friend of my daughter. He's been missing since March 29th, keeping David and all who knew him in our hearts. From Ezekiel McGee, was fully vaccinated on Friday, but unfortunately experiencing some side effects from the shot. Any wishes that they pass quickly would be very appreciated. Holding you in our heart, Ezekiel, in our hearts. A joy that healing is taking place after a bad fall last week from Marty McGuire. Vision getting better and only left with 2 black eyes and achy muscles. Oh, Marty, sending our thoughts and our wishes for healing to you. From Henry Reynolds, my best friend 11 is sick with COVID. Oh, Henry, thinking of you and your best friend. We will all be keeping him in our thoughts and prayers. So young, too young. From Elizabeth Osta, a joy to all this day of rebirth and blessings to our amazing church staff. And health soon to Rev Michelle, yes. A joy to be counting down 1 month exactly until my birthday. David's sister from Janice Mary. David's sister will come to visit from North Carolina this summer. We will all be vaccinated and we'll have a big hug. So much hope in the hugs this morning. From Johanna, a joy. My good friend put deck and porch furniture out so I can see it in the sunshine, then took me for a second shot. Bless good friends. Yes. Wishing well wishes to Rev Michelle, Michael, and their whole family. As for folks who do not know, Rev Michelle, Michael, and their whole family are sick with COVID this week, and so we are just sending them good thoughts and prayers and holding them in our hearts as they take the space they need to hopefully heal and get better. We share a sorrow for our country. That the start of the George Floyd trial has been deeply troubling and difficult for many to watch. The very humanity of a Black man who was murdered by the state is on trial this week. And another sorrow, we are observing the 53rd anniversary today of the death of Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So let us hold that in our hearts. A bowl this morning full of joys and sorrows. We hold a moment for all of the joys and the sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. Today, as we do each Sunday, we light a white candle to acknowledge that we are a community affected by the grief, the loss, the fear, the joy of the hugs, and the complications of young folks getting sick as we are living through and in a pandemic. We light this candle to remind us and to remember that we are a community here together this morning, that we need one another, and that none of us are here going through this alone. May this light be a beacon of hope and a reminder of our connectedness. Dear ones, this morning I want to offer to you this reflection from my time out in the woods recently on some of the fallen trees that I came across. Praise be for the fallen trees, for these homes for new life, for these homes for animals, for new growth, where moss grows, where the cycle of life is and death are so evident. Praise be for the fallen trees, whose life force is recycled, whose new birth comes slowly through decay, through rot, through blending into the natural landscape. Praise be to the fallen trees who have fallen due to lightning, thunder, softness, infestation, whose home provision led to their death, and who shall rise again in new life, nourished by the water, by the soil, by the moss, by the plant life, nourished by the sun and by the absence of sun, by the rain, making them wet and soft, fertile and open to new life. Praise be for the fallen trees, who in their falling create opportunities for new life, for rebirth, for reflections on death, life force, and accepting the natural evolution of all things. Praise be the fallen trees. Let us remember them. As we enter into some shared silence together, let us reflect on the vessels for new life all around us, on what is growing out of what has died or decayed, or is seemingly no longer useful. As we share silence, let us listen to the life stirring within our hearts and within us all. As we return from the silence, our hymn of contemplation for the month of April is hymn number 50, When Darkness Nears. I love getting to see those pictures of our children from an Easter egg hunt that we did a few years ago. Our reading this morning is Hope by the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. And they begin with a quote. "Once we start to act, hope is everywhere." It's a quote from Greta Thunberg. We got it wrong, always looking first for hope, for motivation, inspiration. Only the desperate bearing witness to the beginning of the end can find a new way of being, a new way to live within the magnitude of loss and the certainty of destruction. And by so doing, they bring the next world into being, the one that survives despite resurrection being impossible, and so many of our habits irredeemable from here on. Only by ignoring the obvious outcomes can we become ready for what is so rare we can only call it a miracle. Hope is an obstacle, a barrier that keeps us from needing the new enough to become it. Hope obscures the truth we need if we are going to embrace the extinction of excess, understand the necessity that nothing will ever be the same. Nothing of this world can remain. The hope we need is on the other side of all we believe to be true. Hope broken out of cages and prisons and carbon sequestration. Hope that has broken our rib cages and our sternums in order to get us free. Hope that will always risk dying in order to survive. Once we act, hope is everywhere. The story of Jesus' death is not a new one. His painful death, his time spent in the darkness of the tomb, and his subsequent resurrection, or even reawakening, comes out of old oral traditions that predate his existence. The old stories are told over and over again. The names of the characters may change, but the elements are the same. Out of the difficulties of grief and sadness comes hope and joy. Out of the gift of darkness and rest comes rejuvenation, new energy, capacity for new life. It is an old story because it is sewn into the cycles and the seasons of our living. It is an old story because the earth has kept revolving for years, and as long as we human beings have existed, we have sought to make meaning out of this earth's turning, out of our existence here, sought ways that our stories, our existence fits into a narrative, a story, a cycle larger than ourselves. The sleeping Lord was born a baby and had to be hidden away for the early years of his life. Jesus' birth as well was a time of hope and new life, being born here where his greatness was foretold right from the beginning. And then we waited for many years until he returned. And yet, as Caitlin Doughty, mortician and death acceptance advocate, reminds us, whenever a person gives birth, they are creating not only a life, but a death. Samuel Beckett wrote that women give birth astride the grave, and I would say people give birth astride the grave. Mother Nature is indeed a real mother, creating and destroying in a constant loop. Each new birth heralds the ending of a life at some point, even though that is not what we often associate with the birth of new babies. Yet it is true. To be born is to set a life cycle in motion. To know that that life cycle will likely come to an end at some point. We hope for each person a long and fulfilling life, and yet we know that is just not so for all of us. And so we are called to treasure each day and to make the most of what we have here and now. The sleeping Lord is then awakened out of this dark place underground, perhaps out of a tomb of sorts, though it is explicit, he is not dead. Perhaps where the two stories diverge, because Jesus has certainly died. His friends are mourning for him. His mother is mourning for him. His body has been prepared. His two most beloved disciples, Mary and Mary of Magdalene, traveled to see the tomb, to see his body, and found the tomb empty. Out of the depths of that darkness, the literal darkness of the space, new and mysterious things began to happen. Those who followed Jesus began to see him in odd places. Was it a dream? Was it actually real? Is it possible that someone we thought to be dead can actually be alive again? And this is not the first time it happens in the Bible, right? This is not the first time someone arises from death to move amongst those they love again. At my grandfather's memorial service a few years ago, they read the scripture of the story of Lazarus, a beloved follower of Jesus and a friend to Jesus. Lazarus dies. His two sisters, Mary and Martha, who will forever be Mary and Martha to me after hearing that Catholic priest with a Boston accent tell the story. He always, Mary and Martha, I loved it, has been dead. They plead with Jesus, Mary and Martha plead with Jesus to resurrect Lazarus. And even though Lazarus has been dead long enough to begin the process of decay, Jesus gives it a go. And Lazarus returns to the world of the living, welcome back from the depths of the tomb where he had previously been resting. We celebrate these stories in this season because they speak to us today. From the old story of the sleeping God to Lazarus to Jesus of Nazareth and perhaps other sacred scripture from different traditions, we tell the story over and over again because it is our story. Because this is the story of our lives. One of my dearest friends tells the story of having a father living with HIV. As his HIV progressed into full-blown AIDS, doctors gave him a very short time frame in which to live. She and her loved ones made the preparations for her father to die. They actively grieved him and told him the things that they needed to say before he was gone from their days. Her father himself prepared the best he could. He had been very sick. And then he didn't die. He actually did not die until 15 years later, placing my beloved friend and her family in very close contact with what it means to live each day as if it were your last, showing them what resurrection looks like in real time. My neighbor down the street from where I live has an aunt who has been on a ventilator since December due to COVID. Just a few weeks ago, her aunt was taken off of the ventilator and began the slow process of physical recovery. My neighbor says there are days when she is clear and knows who everyone else is, and there are days when she just looks at you and it feels like she is looking right through you. Her brain is confused. This aunt is someone who is returning back from an experience where many people in our country and across the world have died. And the process of resurrection is not one that is clear and smooth. The road towards reawakening may involve these moments when she is confused, when she is looking right through you. Her aunt will likely never be the same. But many nights, my neighbor goes out in her front yard and lights a candle under one of her trees, praying to the spirits to care for her aunt and to bring her back to health. A light in the darkness of night being where the spirits move in her theology. And I would be remiss in my duties as your out queer minister to not mention Transgender Day of Visibility this past week, as well as the Montero music video from Lil Nas X. As we celebrate the gifts and the visibility of transgender and gender nonconforming people in the fullness of their authenticity, we know this to be a resurrection and a reawakening. For some, out of the experience of needing to hide who they were in order to survive. For some, this resurrection in order just to survive in their skin. For others, the visibility of transgender and gender nonconforming folks heaping expectations on them to perform and to be extra when really all they want is to be able to exist and survive safely. Visibility under the threat of violence is complicated. And if you have not yet seen the music video for the song Montero by Lil Nas X, it's not something I would watch at work or while the children are around, but it has to be mentioned this week as it is giving me and so many others the gift of spring life, seeing out Black queer folks fully embodying their queerness, taking the theology that had been fed to them for so long that gay people were going to hell and turning it on its head, saying, if you think I'm going to hell, I'm going to go there myself and rule. Saying this is who I am in my many forms, in drag, as an alien demon, as Satan themselves, as a fallen angel. The visibility this video provides for Black and brown, queer and trans individuals is nothing short of resurrection and a reawakening to the power and the beauty of these communities. The gifts they bring to a world that has too often rejected the gift. The shedding of the shame that tells those on the margins that we need to hide who we are in order to live. Out of the desperation to live comes the miracle of visibility, challenge, and the beauty we so often long for in this world. And I feel like that is where we must begin theologically when we look at the hope and renewal, the reawakening of this season. The summer God reawakened out of a sleep that is born out of needing to be hidden in the darkness. Lazarus is resurrected in the midst of the tears of deep grief shed by his sisters and by Jesus of Nazareth himself. Jesus returns to life out of the grief of his disciples and the hopelessness of knowing one's dream has truly been lost. One's dreams have been buried away in the tomb. Anyone who has known grief and loss knows these depths. Anyone who has sat with the "how could this be?" of unexpected loss in the myriad ways it shows up in our lives knows these depths. All of us have been sitting in the depths of grief, making space in the dark places below ground, in the tombs of our very beings, as we have watched more than 400,000 Americans die of COVID across our country and many more across our world. We have been in these depths as mass shootings driven by white supremacy, hate, misogyny, and a carceral system that refuses to be accountable or to value human life have been unfolding before our eyes. We have been in the depths. We have grieved in the ways that Reverend Sean Parker Dennison writes about. Only the desperate, bearing witness to the beginning of the end, can find a new way of being, a new way to live within the magnitude of loss and the certainty of destruction. And they also remind us the hope we need is on the other side of all we believe to be true. Hope broken out of cages and prisons and carbon sequestration. Hope that has broken our rib cages and sternums in order to get us free. Hope that will always risk dying in order to survive. Once we act, hope is everywhere. Hope must be found this season in the fact that our hearts can break, in the fact that we have been grieving, in the new world that we are growing into, in the community that we are becoming out of this experience. We find hope this season in the fact that this pandemic has turned us towards what is really important, the care of one another. We find hope this season that the new signs of spring in what is being reborn again and again and again, we find hope in these new signs of spring. We find hope in the ways our church is changing, in the ways we know we cannot go back to where we once were, that each one of us has been transformed by this experience. And that hope is held alongside death. The hope of vaccination is held alongside the reality that this disease still exists, that it is still affecting so many lives, that so much has been lost. We find hope in our capacity to hold both the pain of our past and our present day, along with the joy, the renewal, the reawakening, the spring life. This weekend, I came across a quote from Valerie Kaur, who says, "In our tears and our agony, we hold our children close and confront the truth. The future is dark, but my faith dares me to ask, what if the darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our America is not dead, but a country still waiting to be born?" An interesting and a challenging sentiment after so much hope has been lost this past year as we have borne witness to what feels like the beginning of the end. As we have borne witness to so much violence, an insurrection on the Capitol, a winter in isolation, a feeling of deep hopelessness, witnessing so many die without the comfort and the care of their loved ones beside them. Is this the tomb? Is this the womb? Out of our heartbreak, what can be reborn? Out of our grief and our lamentations, what is reawakened within us? Or even awakened just for the first time? For the miracle to come, we must be open to what has not been possible before, to the reawakening, to the resurrection within ourselves and our community. We must be open to what was previously unimaginable, the miracle that only comes from ignoring the obvious outcomes and letting go of what we previously thought impossible. We are being born anew alongside the earth, not dismissing our pain or our loss or our grief. Both are happening at the same time. The spring is here. The time to hope is upon us. Happy Ostara, First Universalist, and happy Easter. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And as we are a community that holds many different both ands and contains multitudes, this morning we are going to have a hymn mashup of 3 different Easter hymns. Hymn number 268, Jesus Christ is risen today. Hymn number 269, Lo, the Day of Days is here. And also, Lo, the earth awakes again, whose number I didn't write down, but here we are. So we invite you to remain muted and to sing out joyfully from home, again, creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves. As we extinguish our chalice flame here at First Universalist and wherever you are joining us from, let us say our chalice extinguishing words together. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Dear ones, I'll invite you to turn your view towards gallery view so that you may look upon the faces of those gathered here in this space. Let us reach out and join hands with one another across the screens, across the seeming divides, and just plug into some of the connection and the beauty of this space. Dear ones, may you go forth this week and reawaken to the spring. May your spirits and your hearts be rejuvenated by this beautiful sunshine outside and by some of the relief of the dark and the cold of winter. May you go forth this week with love and joy in your heart, remembering joy and gratitude wherever you go. May you just let out an alleluia as we end our time together, as many alleluias as we can fit in, dear ones. May you go forth from this space knowing that you are loved, and may you bring that love wherever you go. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. As we enjoy our postlude from our fabulous music director, Brock Cheswold, I'll invite you to join me with an alleluia in the chat. Please join in posting that in there so we can hear from everyone and enjoy our postlude this morning. Happy Easter.